Good Monday morning to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Your week's off to a great start. And I appreciate you joining me here. If you will, like, share, comment on the post, and then join me as we jump into the 21st chapter of the book of Acts. And we're going to see Paul as he gets his visit to Jerusalem off to a start. Verse 17 says, "When we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. And on the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present." Not necessarily a great deal of theology there, I guess you'd say, but there's again kind of setting the stage for events that will follow coming up. Paul and his group. Luke and others have now arrived in Jerusalem. They were warmly welcomed. And then the next day, Paul, it says, goes to see James, and all the elders were present. So he has been received by those where he's staying. And this is kind of an unofficial welcome, if you will. He had the next day, then we see him kind of his official welcome as he meets with James and his traveling companions. Again, it says Paul went with us, and so the whole group that was traveling with Paul goes and meet the elders of the Jerusalem church. Now, the whole church is not present, just the elders. Perhaps the church was not invited. Perhaps at this time they just didn't think it would be a good idea for the whole church to gather. Paul was had already been given word that it was going to, that there was a plot against him, and so a large gathering would have just drawn attention to his presence before he could accomplish his objectives. But it just wasn't very wise for the whole church to gather at this point. But what I do see, and what just jumped out to me as I read this, and again, keep in mind, if you've been with us up to this point, the background, everybody else in Paul's world, the elders and even those Paul's traveling companions have been urging Paul to change his plans. Don't go to Jerusalem. There's a plot there. The Jews want to attack you, and that, and so stay away. And yet, when Paul gets to Jerusalem, the brothers receive them gladly. They go the next day, and they go with them to James, and all the elders are there. And that just really spoke to my heart as I read that here's a man, to use the fancy phrase, persona non grata, somebody who would, just not be welcome by society, but yet the brothers receive him. James and the elders receive him. This is a picture where what the church ought to be, and how the church ought to behave. Paul may have not, Paul wasn't going to get voted most likely to do anything other than maybe die in Jerusalem. But his friends, his brothers and sisters in Christ, stood by him. They stood with him. They received him gladly. How things would have been in that day. If Paul is a wanted man, if Paul is in danger, anybody who's associated with him is in all likelihood in danger as well. But they received him gladly. They went then to James and the elders and sat down and met with them, and they met together. What a great picture of how the church should behave. I quote the late great Dr. Vance Havner. He had many great statements, but one that has just stuck in my mind over the years, as Dr. Havner said, the church is the only place in the world that shoots their wounded. And so oftentimes they do. But here we see the church behaving as they should. Even though Paul was a wanted man, Paul was a marked man, the church, his brothers and sisters, received him warmly. Let that be our testimony today. Let that be the testimony of each of us in our churches, that we love one another, that we support one another, we stick with them through all types of circumstances, that we love each other. And again, remind you why that's so important, because the Bible tells us that this is how the world will know whether or not we love God, is whether or not we love each other. What a beautiful picture of the church being faithful to stick by Paul. Let's keep that same testimony in our lives and in our churches today. We'll see you here tomorrow morning.